You ready to go?
Good, Sharon?
Yes, Mark. All set. It's live.
Yeah, we're just not in the same place, but I think she's ready. All right, go ahead, Margaret.
Okay. Well, this is Margaret Turner. I think most of you know me. I'm the chair of the Board of Selectmen here in Waterville Valley, and we're happy to have, it looks like, about 30 participants so far. I'm sure that number is going to go up. I will tell you that we did get a request this meeting conducted as a live in-person meeting. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not really into large in-person meetings at this time, even when you make your attempts at social distancing and disinfecting and all of that kind of thing. So if anybody has an issue with that decision, it was my decision, it was nobody else's decision. At the beginning of all our selectmen meetings, we have to go through a set of required legal statements, and they may be a little boring, but think about if you had to say them 4 or 5 times a month. So I'm going to say them now, and you can listen. And as chair of the Board of Selectmen, I find that the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public as well has the opportunity to contemporaneously listen and participate. We are also provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, and we included the Zoom number, or you could go to the website and find the Zoom address there. We are providing a mechanism for public to alert the public body during the meeting if there's any problem with access. You can use the chat. You can call 603-236-4730, and Sharon will get to us with that. And we will adjourn the meeting if the public is unable to access this meeting. There are going to be no votes taken during this meeting. This is a meeting at which there are not going to be any decisions made. It's technically referred to as a workshop meeting. And the Board of Selectmen has not met to discuss the masking issue, which I think will compromise most of our meeting today, nor do we have a proposed ordinance. We are here to listen to your thoughts today, and because the meeting is being recorded, we can go back and listen to them again to make sure that we heard properly. To set the stage, I just wanted to go over a few things about our current status here in Waterville Valley. As of yesterday at 9 a.m., Waterville Valley had 0 active cases of coronavirus. As of yesterday at 9 a.m., Waterville Valley total cases were between 1 and 4, and that's as specific as the Department of Health and Human Services gets in their report. Waterville Valley has just under 500 permanent residents. All of our indoor spaces in Waterville Valley currently have mask requirements. Businesses, town facilities, restaurants, golf club, White Mountain Athletic Club, the school, the post office, the library. And when I say mask requirements, that does not mean that people must wear a mask at all times, but there are specific instances in which masks are required in all of those places. The outside area of Town Square requires masks if social distancing cannot be maintained. And that area is a private area. Same thing with the beach, which is a public area where groups except for families are limited to under 10. We normally have about 2 Waterville Valley public safety personnel on shift to cover all police, fire, medical emergencies in town. And we are a resort town, nearly 4-season vacation destination with visitors from all over the world. So as we listen to each other today, and again, that's the main purpose of this meeting, is to listen to what the comments are. We did get some comments in on email. I'd like all of you to consider in your comments, what is the health risk that you are attempting to address if you're looking for a mask ordinance? What's the behavior change that you're seeking? How do you see a mask ordinance being enforced? Should we be having arrests, fines, and people jailed? What suggestions do you have for maintaining a welcoming atmosphere in our resort town? And what suggestions do you have for implementing changes should we go forward with a mask ordinance? Okay, Mark, let's turn it over to the public, see what we have to hear here.
Okay, Margaret, we do have nearly 50 folks on here, so
Okay.
you could just raise your hand, and we'll just call on you and have you make your comments, and or you can send a question through the group chat function here on Zoom as well.
Are you waving your hand, Mike?
I'm waiting for someone to go ahead, Andrew. Andrew Hosteller. I saw yours pop up.
Sorry, I was just making sure that I was muted.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
Sorry about that.
Ray Kucharski looks like he has a question.
Right. Ray, go ahead.
That's not Ray, that's Susie.
Or Susie, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi from Malton Borough. Be back in Waterville in a couple of months. So, other than rigid reinforcement of mask wearing, I don't really see any downside to it in order to protect ourselves and each other, both from our own citizens, but more from people who are visitors who come from wide and far to Waterville Valley. And I don't know if mandate is the right word or what the right word would be, but to strongly encourage mask wearing. But on the other side, it fines or certainly no jail time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Susie.
Ray Kucharski, I know you have a question. Are you let me find you here and I'll help you unmute. Well, now I can't find Ray. Okay.
I see him on my iPad.
It's iPad Ray, so it starts with an I.
iPad.
I got it. I got it. All right, now you're unmuted. You should be unmuted, Ray. Nope, not it. Yep, there you go. You are unmuted, Ray. Go on.
Well, my comment is when I go over to town square, I see a lot to get my mail. I see a lot of people in town squares. Some are wearing masks and some are not wearing masks. But there's no one from the town to remind people. And I don't really expect to do it, but there's nobody there to remind them. You know, there's signs all over town about wearing masks, but people don't. They ignore signs. My comment is, why don't we get somebody from the town to remind people, especially on weekends?
Okay. I have Shelley Z has asked a question. Could we have masks available at town square entrances in a manner similar to the doggy waste bags? And D. Whitney has a comment. Can you please clarify what the difference is between the current state requirements and a mask ordinance?
We don't have one.
Well, we do not have a mask ordinance currently in the town, but the state, Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but the state emergency orders and anything like that, while they have issued general guidance, there's no specific requirements for masks within the state. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct, Mark.
Okay, Mike.
Mike Capel.
Do you have
That is correct.
any other comments, Mike?
Well, I think that we have to recognize we are the only New England state that does not have one. If you follow, as I'm sure Mark has, there are various municipalities around the state that took votes recently as to whether or not to have them. I don't think just having a mask available. I think what you need is volunteers around the town. I will emphasize that very politely, say to people, Waterville Valley has an ordinance requiring masks indoors or whenever there is more than 10 people. Would you like us to give you a mask? And if they say no, you stop. You don't take them on, you don't aggravate them, you just say no. If we feel that it is necessary to go beyond that, that's when you call the public service people and let them kind of re-emphasize it. But to actually put people in jail, no, that doesn't make sense. The vast majority of Waterville people that I see are wearing masks. It is mainly our visitors that I see not wearing them. I think that we need an ordinance because if you took a look at the beach a couple weekends ago, our beach was shoulder to shoulder with nary a mask, just seeing the same thing in the village. All of our golf club and so on, they have all put masks in place, not because of a town ordinance, because of what they wanted to do, which they could change if they wanted to, which I don't think they will. So I think what is necessary, the big question is enforcement. I think that if we tried, we could find a sufficient number of volunteers on weekends who would donate a couple hours in the village, on the beach, wherever, to very politely say, sir, madam, you are not wearing a mask. We have a town ordinance here. Would you like me to give you a mask? And if they say no, you don't take them on. You just either pass it on to our public service people or just let them go. We don't want a confrontation the way there have been in other places. That's my opinion.
This is Barbara Prendergast. We own Jugtown. I am definitely in favor of the ordinance. As I had indicated previously in a different Zoom meeting, we are seeing more and more aggressive behavior by our visitors to our request to wear masks. And if there's a town ordinance, then it sort of backs us up. And I think all visitors, whether the hotels are sending out reservation information to people or what have you, that they have to be notified upon making the reservation or even prior to the this ordinance. Therefore, they have that expectation when they come. Asking volunteers to do it or whoever to do this and police it in town square is a great idea. I can only tell you the experience we have had. And in the beginning, everyone was really lovely, very cordial, very compliant. The last few weeks, people are don't want any part of it, and they're trying to politicize it to us. And I just don't know what the answer is. I can just tell you that I expect that if anybody approaches someone in town square, you might also get that same kind of reaction.
Okay, Jennifer, did you have a comment?
I'm the one who wrote that.
Yeah. I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No problem.
There we go. All right, so I don't live here, but I'm a second homeowner, and I'm here, will be here more frequently, also from Massachusetts, and took it very, very seriously during our own lockdown. In fact, I didn't come for 4 months. I understand right now the most rigid of all the guidelines are New York and Massachusetts, which have a reciprocal agreement to not quarantine with New Hampshire as of this moment. Rhode Island, as of yesterday, will be added to Massachusetts list for quarantining. So I assume, you know, those things impact here as well. But if people are so-called maintaining 6 feet in town square, I believe are meeting the requirements. It's just that what I see is kids and stuff weaving in and out. And so maybe for a nanosecond, they're maintaining 6 feet, and the next nanosecond, they're not. I don't know how you enforce that exactly. Also at the beach, I didn't see exactly shoulder to shoulder people, but I did see groups of people who are clearly not all one family who were shoulder to shoulder and completely blowing off any social distancing or any masks. So given what other states and the CDC and all that is saying, I'm not sure how you could create or enforce a mask ordinance in an outside venue when people can claim that they're 6 feet or more apart. And that's not very helpful, but I just want to throw that out there. I presume, and please, Tim Smith or whomever, tell me what the stats are. I believe about half of the people who come here are from Massachusetts. So perhaps it's realistic to kind of look to those guidelines, because maybe in theory, you will get a little more compliance since they're already used to it, as long as they don't have this sort of drop the leash attitude when they come here. Thanks.
Okay, Rich, Rita, do you have something to get to you?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Just a question for everybody to help me as a select board person with making the best decision here. I'd like to know what the extent of this mask mandate, town mask mandate, should be, what you think it should be. Are we talking about having to wear a mask if you're walking around town or in town trails, or are we talking about contractors who are working here wearing a mask, or DPW workers, or golf course workers, or are we talking something more narrow than that? So if someone could, or someone could help me better understand what we really mean by a mandate. What are the parameters? Thanks, everybody.
Okay, the Avison, you're still muted. Hold on. I'm trying to help you there. Sorry. There you are. Oh, sorry. Very.
Okay, I think.
There you go. You got it.
Thanks very much. Thanks everybody for doing this. We're also second homeowners there, and we've spent like the last 5 months in Waterville. We just happen to be in Massachusetts for 1 week this week. But Rich just said a few things that I was going to bring up. So in Mass, we are very diligent about masking. And if you go into Boston, even the healthcare areas, you have to wear a mask there. However, it's all about the distance and related to how many people are gathering in a particular location as well. Now, I hope if we do an ordinance, and I really did see a lot of people unmasking the last couple of weeks when I was up there. I hope we have some flexibility in it, that for those of us who are morning walkers and go out and walk the big route every morning, honestly, I don't want to wear a mask to do that. I'm not sure that kind of thing would be necessary. Myself, if we're in, going into town square, I think going through the entrance levels, entryways there, it's almost impossible to social distance if there are people coming out. But I think if there were to be an ordinance, there'd be a little bit of flexibility there around not wearing a mask if you can distance, not wearing a mask if you're hiking and can distance, et cetera, et cetera. Those are my inputs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
I agree. I think the biggest problem is basically in town square. I have never had a problem hiking or walking or playing tennis or playing golf. But when we're having music downtown and we're inviting big groups to the valley, then they're going to gather down. And that's where the biggest problem is. And please tell me if it's happening elsewhere, but that's what I see.
Would it be possible to do an ordinance for town square, or is that not practical?
Well, yeah, we can write that down as a note, Rich. Okay, Marilyn Clarkson, you have your hand up.
There we go.
Hi, yeah, this is Randy Burnham with Maryland, and we're permanent residents here in Waterville Valley. And I just wanted to express my support for the mask ordinance, because I think it would add a lot of simplicity, a lot of clarity, and a lot of consistency for this period of time when we're dealing with the coronavirus. I don't think that the enforcement is a serious issue. We have enforcement for parking on the street, and nobody really goes to jail with that. And I know that ticketed if they're only staying for a little while, but if they cause a commotion, then it can be elevated. So I think the same thing with the mask could be done. That if there's a confrontation, if it does rise to the level of calling in the safety officers, then that could be done.
Belligerence around it, yes. May I continue on that? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I just want to reiterate what we've been talking about, that the mask it's about protecting others. So I really feel as a community that we should show more concern for one another. It's a way of showing respect during this time. And I don't want it to become, this little town depends on tourism. And so I don't want it to become an us versus them. But we feel like we're seeing it really being too loosey-goosey now that there is this great big of influx from tourism. And it feels like this us versus them lack of respect. And I think that it feels in a way like an invasion. It feels, when I see people, it feels to me like they're throwing litter on the ground and walking away. That feeling that you get when you see somebody throw litter on the ground just intentionally and walk away like it's not their issue. They don't have to care about this, the land that they live on or the society that they live in. And it feels like the same thing with the masks. It's something that we need to do for each other. And the CDC has said that if everyone would wear a mask, we could probably get rid of COVID within a month or two. And the problem across the country has been that there hasn't been compliance. So I think we have an opportunity to set an example. I think we're a little town, but in a unique position because we have a huge amount of tourism coming in. Probably the majority of it, if I had to guess, is from these New England states, who all have mask requirements except New Hampshire. And I get Governor Sununu's position that it should be implemented according to what's going on in those towns. And so that's why you see that the college towns like Durham just passed an ordinance on Monday. I guess, I'm not quite sure if it's passed in Plymouth, but Keene, Plymouth, Hanover, all the college towns are doing it. And so, and the large cities, I sent around the court decision from Nashua, and in the court decision, it has the specific bullets of how their ordinance is written. Most of the ordinances that I've read say that when you're outside and can maintain a distance of 6 feet, it's not necessary to wear a mask. And I think most people have respected that when they're out for the walks. People try to give each other a wide berth. And the other thing that I've seen in the ordinances that I've read is that whenever you're exerting, you're exercising or some activity of exertion, you shouldn't have to wear it. So I also wanted to point out that Maine, like Massachusetts and Vermont, who also abut New Hampshire, they have had an ordinance in place, I think since April 29, mask wearing. But as of July 8th, Governor Mills sent out another executive order strengthening the use of face coverings, or i.e. masks. But interesting, this one applied to the 7 coastal counties, attract tourists and have large congregations of people. There was a lot of pushback from the rest of the state saying, why didn't she make it statewide? But I think that Waterville Valley is in the same position with tourism that these coastal counties in Maine are in. And I think if we saw Governor Mills of Maine make that decision to have all those counties with a large influx of tourism get more diligent and more consistent about wearing masks, that model fits our situation too.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Mike?
Hi, Mike Aronson here. I think we need an ordinance, and I think what we need to do is to figure out a way where we can work with the private facilities as well as the public facilities and come up with an ordinance that requires masks in any public place of assembly. I think besides doing that, we also need to educate our guests, meaning, I think Barbara talked about it before reservations, but I remember when we talked about the dog ordinance a few years ago, we talked about pamphlets. I think every guest coming here should get a pamphlet, talking about what the ordinance is once we decide on one, if we decide on one, as well as having, brochure stands and maybe some masks if we can afford it to be out for these people. So it's clearly understood what's expected. We talked to the Hockey Academy. They have a piece of land they're leasing, which is owned by the town. So masks are required in there, but we have to make it clear to their people that are here for the tournaments that the masks are required outside, and it's good neighborly, it's good sense, and it's good health. We're on the right step forward, but it has to be all encompassing, and it has to be with a large educational part to it. So we don't need us going out and policing this. So signage would help and things like that. That's my thought on it.
Brooke C., you have your hand up? Or you did?
I did. Hi, this is the other portion of the Clarkson contingent. I'm also pro-mask. I think that's a really good idea. And I'd like to add too that if we take a leaf out of our, I guess you could say, big sisters books from out west, if you go both to Vail resorts as well as Jackson Hole, those small towns in a similar position to our own have also implemented a mask ordinance. And pretty much the same situations out there. And the way that the crowd control has been implemented has been very effective. There's a lot of signage, a lot of, and it's going very well. And a lot of the contentious conversations that have taken place between business owners and tourists have been eliminated. And it's been a very effective position for them. So I think that's a great example for us to look at as well as a small community perspective.
Okay, Barbara Pendergrass.
I'm wondering, I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of weddings that are going to be coming into town. And, you know, we do have a wedding planner. And I feel like, you know, this information has to be sent through the resort as well. Another idea, so that, you know, most people are already dealing with similar ordinances from wherever they come. So they need to understand it's also here. But can we also have something, I mean, we have the flashing speed sign. Could we have a sign entering Waterville Valley that indicate, welcome to Waterville Valley, our town has a mask ordinance or what have you. So even the second homeowners or renters or what have you, the Airbnb people also are aware of how our town's gonna handle the mask situation. It's just a thought, I don't know.
Okay. Dee Whitney and then Mark Wagner.
Hi, this is Deborah. We are also second home owners. I am definitely in favor of a mask rule, a mask ordinance. I did think that potentially a targeted one where inside town square, it's a non-negotiable. They are required, whether you're inside or outside. And then outside of town square, maybe if you can't maintain 6 feet of distance. Now, Mike Aronson, on the other hand, had much more all-encompassing one, and I would certainly be in favor of that if everybody said, we're just going, you know, all in, mask up, and that's that. I think kind of being in the middle probably is the least effective of those three. And one other thing I wanted to comment on is everyone is thinking about people who are coming in, visitors, but just also please keep in mind people who, you know, everyone, every time they leave the valley, even to go to Hampton Covered, let's say, to, you know, grab a carton of milk and then come back into the valley is also piercing the bubble of Waterville Valley. And keep that in mind. So anybody that you come into contact with, if you go to play golf outside of the valley, once you come back in, you're also bringing back, you know, any exposure to anyone else that you've encountered from outside. So it really is a full community effort to protect everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Wagner.
Yeah, I'm in favor of an ordinance. I like the way Mike had phrased it. I think it does need to have something behind it though. So if someone absolutely refuses when the safety officer comes, is there any action you take? You just say, oh, well, we tried, and you walk away, right? If there's a potential $50 fine or something, I can't imagine there's many people in the world that don't know important. And I think people come here, you know, to get outside and get away, but they just don't bring a mask with them when they go to the stores and stuff. And an ordinance would also help protect the store owners and employees.
Okay.
I think we're the only thing that I worry about, and I appreciate it so much, and I still want an ordinance. The only thing I worry about, without somebody in uniform asking them to abide by the ordinance, there's going to be pushed back and there's going to be abuse. I can only tell you what we've experienced. Everybody is nice. And I don't know if the presence of a police officer downtown on weekends, just sort of there, would help. But the last thing you want to do is start a war between people. If they see just a lay person telling them that they need to wear a mask, it will often come back with a not so nice comment. So, you know, you also don't want to see other visitors seeing a confrontation. They want this to be friendly. So I'm just wondering if, you know, on weekends, perhaps we have some sort of police presence downtown that's just sort of wandering around and keeping saying hello to people and reminding them to put their mask over their face
Okay,
is smarter. I don't know. I can only tell you the abuse that we're getting, and I doubt that it would change outside of the store.
okay. Bill Powell? I saw you raised your hand.
Putting my hand up, it was gonna work. I had a question, and maybe you covered this because we came in a couple minutes late about jurisdiction. And is, the town square, from what I understand, is owned by the resort. Does the town have jurisdiction in there? Can police officers go in for something like this to do enforcement? So that's my first question. Secondly, if it can be enforced by police, is having that part of the literature or signage going to be enough of a deterrent to head off some of the non-compliance? I don't think we're looking for 100% compliance. I think what you're trying to do is get people to make the decision on their own that a mask is a good thing.
Right, so Mike, Bill, I'll let Chris Hodges talk about, if he is still here, because I can't see him now, about jurisdiction. So I don't see him. I don't know if he's been called away. We will get that answer. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we'll get the jurisdiction. Oh, there you go. You want to address jurisdiction?
To where I'm at, wherever you go. So if you apply it to town square, then you're targeting private business. So if there is an ordinance enacted, it's going to be townwide. And enforcement is very subjective. The ordinance would have to be very detailed in what type of masks people need to have, how they wear them, what qualifies as a mask, what doesn't. If somebody isn't covering their nose as they should be wearing, is that a violation? If you walk up to somebody, they don't have a mask on, but they put it on as you're walking up, is that a violation? There's so many moving parts. I think encouraging social distancing and respect for fellow man is the way to go with this. It's just enforcement is just going to be it's going to be quite a challenge, and we've seen this in the other towns that have enacted that. So that's my thought. So it's got to be all in or not at all. You can't target town square. A lot of the private businesses are empowered to have their own rules, and if people don't follow those rules, they can be asked to leave, and then it's trespassing if they don't leave. So that's just kind of the challenges that would come about with an ordinance. And that's the way I see it.
Okay, the ledgers? I'm trying to unmute you. Sorry, hold on. There you go.
Hi, is it done? This is going to sound very simplistic, but what defines town square? And I think I like the idea with the signs. But the other day, for example, I saw a whole bunch of hockey guys and their moms standing out by the dumpsters, in the back where all that. There was anybody was wearing a mask. And so what I'm thinking is this: I like the idea of the sign coming into town, but I think we also could have some signs as like advertisement signs are already there for every entrance that we decide is in fact the town square, and say, you are now entering town square, masks are very highly recommended. So they'll know, instead of saying, well, I didn't know about it, so they'll know.
So just as a point of go ahead.
I was wondering if Barbara was really talking about enforcing in terms of giving fines. But I think her idea, when there are a bunch of people around, to have a policeman walking and reminding people will have already a lot of effect. Just the power of the uniform. Without
exactly right.
the person who is going to assess a fee on the spot.
Okay, good. I just, as a point of clarification, the definition of town square, it's all private. All of that land is private property. So if town square were to say that their property required a mask, that would include all of the area inside within the buildings, the parking lots, and all of that. That's all private. So, so just to be clear on, we're talking about privately owned property. Okay?
Yeah, right. I was just trying to say, if you're a visitor and you show up, how do you know when you're in the town or not?
Yeah,
I know
right.
that's really simplistic, but.
Right. Yep. Nope. We will have to clarify that. Alan Zelbo, you have your hand lowered or up.
I think I unmuted.
There you go. You're unmuted.
Well, yeah, generally speaking, I'm in favor of some ordinance, and certainly as a nation, not just as one, we have to get behind this one. But I'm a little confused on, or question a couple of things. Barbara certainly doesn't want people without masks. Can she refuse serving customers? Number one. Chris alluded to the fact, and you just said it's private property. And Chris says, well, it needs to be a townwide ordinance. Well, thinking ahead, maybe if we have an audience, it has to be like for 3 months. Where does the mountain fit in this? It's one thing to have 100 people in the square. What do you do with 1,000 people in the ski lodge?
Right. Okay, that is something we're going to have to look at, Ellen, for sure. Let me get the folks who have their hand up here. First of all, Marilyn, go ahead.
Are you talking about me, this Marilyn?
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
I think it might have been Randy that had his hand up, but my big question is, I've got to run the elections in September and November, and I'm trying to figure out, like all the other moderators in the state that haven't yet passed townwide ordinances, how we will be able to enforce it if people come in and say, no, it's stupid, it's ridiculous, I'm not gonna wear it. I mean, I'm not gonna be the one standing there and saying, yes, you absolutely have to. You know, but I don't want to disenfranchise voters either. Right. I'm not sure if the school's mask ordinance, well, I guess the school board is expecting the children coming back to wear masks, but I'm not sure how that covers us running the polls if they're in the gym.
Yeah, and we will have to have that conversation for how it relates specifically to the election, because there's a load of questions that are specific to that, and like you alluded to, the fact that we don't want to disenfranchise folks, but we will work those things out. And our ordinance would have to address public buildings as well as private land. So we will work that out.
Right, that's why I would like to suggest to everybody listening that if there were to be a town-wide ordinance, that it should cover more than just, I mean, where we really see the big problem is around town square when there's a big influx of tourists, but I think it has to apply everywhere. I know Brooke was on earlier, I don't know if she's gone back to work, but she was telling me a story about some friends of hers who were visiting, their families have condos or homes here, and they were visiting on one of the busy weekends. I'm not sure if I think it was 4th of July weekend, but they said they were really confused. They were in the square and they really weren't sure about what the deal was with masks. They went into, it just seemed like there were different procedures and nobody was really enforcing, and it wasn't, I think the whole idea of recommending is a word that needs to be struck. I just think keep it simple, stupid. It just has to be an all-encompassing, you have to do this. A recommendation is just never gonna work. And they know that from the towns that have had the elections so far. They've had about an 8% non-compliance. And what the state is recommending for us to do is pretty extraordinary. It's pretty unrealistic. It would involve a lot more volunteers come, because they would have to be handled separately in a separate room so as not to make all of the election officials unsafe. And that's just, we don't have enough volunteers to set up a whole separate procedure for people that aren't willing to make such a small concession for their community townspeople. It amazes me that they're looking at an 8% non-compliance across these other towns.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got Rich Davis and then Mike Bell, please.
Question.
Oh, hold on. You've muted yourself again. Hold on. Try that now.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. If we did a town-wide ordinance, does that encompass and cover all of the private pieces of land and businesses in the town? So just a question, and I'm not picking on anybody here, so please don't get mad at me, but what would happen? Would it cover a golf course? Would it cover swimming pool? Would it cover WMAC and things like that? So if we said, okay, an ordinance is anytime you can't social distance and you have a mask on, would it cover all of those places as well, or just the roads and byways owned by the town?
Whatever the board wanted to cover, we can craft the language so that it will cover those areas. So I think what Chris was alluding to was the fact that the preference would be to do everywhere, so that it would be evenly enforceable everywhere in town, public, private. But I don't know, I haven't talked to town councils, so we would have to see what language could be adopted, so.
Because, you know, if the reason for this is to, as Marilyn and others have stated, control the virus, try to minimize the exposure, if we only do that in certain pockets in the town and not in other pockets, I question what the benefit would really be to anybody. And again, I'm not picking on any individual business, but you know, it just seems to me it wouldn't work and it wouldn't solve the problem we're trying to solve. Thank you.
Yeah. That office is closed until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, I can't get you that information until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Mike Cabell.
I got it.
There you go.
Anyone that has been paying attention to the news, the people with scientific knowledge have stressed over and over and over again that if we want to mitigate the effects of this virus, the number one thing is masks, along with washing your hands and so on. So it would seem to me that as I walked around the valley before I could walk, when I could, especially over 4th of July weekend, people were gathering and people were not paying attention to social distancing. They were not wearing masks. Same thing in the evenings with the concerts, same thing with some other situations. We have to take care of it. With regard to drafting, this is not something that has not been done by numerous municipalities already within the state and numerous states all around us. So we're not exactly reinventing the wheel to get this thing done. I have to go and take cookies down to the tennis social. We've got to do this to protect ourselves. If all we had was our 500 people here, I think the vast majority of the 500 people would take care of it. Mark, you can tell me, or Tim, you can tell me, on a busy weekend, like 4th of July weekend or Labor Day weekend, we can have, instead of 500 people, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people here on a weekend. All of a sudden, we have to protect ourselves from them, and we have to protect them from themselves. I think that is our responsibility as presumably leaders of the town. So just so that you are aware, we are reopening our school. The students will be required to wear masks the entire time, except for designated mask breaks, which will be very short in nature, and lunch. We're breaking down how people can come, how students can come in to mitigate their contact with each other. The school has spent a lot of time, and Gail Adams Davis has spent a tremendous amount of time, as others have, to do this for the school. I think we have to do it for the town as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Aronson.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the suggestion I had made, where I think besides places of assembly, it should also include places and times when you cannot reasonably expect to keep social distancing. Meaning that if you go out and play golf with your wife or another couple and you're on there, I don't think you need a mask if the other couple is okay with it. If you're out biking yourself or someone else, that's something else. Hiking by yourself. But walking through these congested areas, going to and from these areas, I think the athletic club does a great job keeping the entrance to the athletic club as a mask designated zone. I did notice the Neil Roach the other day. No one was wearing a mask over there. We tend to think of our friends and people who we know being safe, but we all could have this thing. So we've really got to look at it. But I think, it's essential that we get that public-private, partnership into this, so we can get, as Mike and some other people have said, get it done properly. If we don't do it properly, I think we're wasting, and it could have a serious effect.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Marilyn Clarkson.
Hi there, can you hear me? I also own a house in Metro Boston, and I have a lot of respect for Governor Baker, and I've tuned into a lot of his daily live COVID updates. And yesterday I was down at my house there, so I did tune in, and I thought it was interesting that he said, there've been recently, the numbers are going up a bit in Massachusetts, and he said that they have traced it primarily to outdoor gatherings. So this, like Mike Aronson was just saying, the ordinances, the way they've been written in other areas, still leave room for you to be outside as long as you're 6 feet apart without a mask. And that's why golf has been a great activity for people, because generally you don't come in closer contact than that. But people think that when they're outside, that's a safe place to be. And that's one of the big spread areas now. These gatherings, people get very excited. They're on vacation. It's a place where they can let loose. They're up in the mountains now. It's a different atmosphere than when you're in Metro Boston. And so they feel a false sense of permissiveness about it. And it's just, especially when you've had a drink or two, everything becomes a little bit more permissive still. So, but I think the way that the ordinance will eventually get written will state that as long as you're outside and can maintain that distance, that you don't have to get extreme about it. There's no reason to have a mask on beyond that. Thanks.
Okay, Bill Powell.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. We all want to make this thing perfect. Perfect will kill us if we make that an excuse to not do it. We need an ordinance. I'm obviously a proponent of an ordinance. We need this thing now. And if we try to cover every possible scenario, every possible situation, it'll never get written because it becomes an act of Congress. So I think just being able to tell people there's a town ordinance for mask wearing is going to be a really strong deterrent.
And I caution the selectmen to try to make it a perfect ordinance. Let's get something that covers some, X% of the situation and get it in place. And then, this isn't going away. We have plenty of time to fix it. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Bill. Monique?
As a resort community, Waterville Valley is really vulnerable. I don't know if you saw the Portland Press Herald in Maine. They've discovered that at least 35 out-of-state visitors in Bar Harbor have come into the area carrying COVID, and they're very worried about that because these people may have been tested, but the test results don't come right away. So, as soon as you have community transmission, then you're in big trouble. So I agree with Bill Powell. I think it's just have that ordinance and at least have something on the books making masks required in Waterville Valley. That's it for me.
All right. Reggie, brief. Hold on. Let me get John muted. Can you do it from your device? Because it's not working here.
Okay.
There you go.
I just think we also have to remember, everyone's been talking about taking more precautions. Up to this point, the precautions that we've been using and the ones that people have been seeing have still netted us as 1 to 4 cases. This is since March. We're not doing so bad. So that's just a voice of reason. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I'm looking for anybody else who wants to comment.
I agree with her, but we have a ton of groups coming in. I just want to warn everybody, there's a ton of groups and weddings coming in. So it's not going to stay that way. It's not. So, yes, we've done a great job. The community has been fantastic, but, we can't wait until it does happen. We have to prevent it from happening.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Morgan Dean, I saw you nodding or raising your hand.
Hi. So I am a nurse. I work through SPEAR, and I'm also a parent of a kid in the school and president of the PTA. I just want to say that Waterville Valley is an incredible refuge. It was even on WMUR about that. But if we want to keep it a refuge, we need to have this mask ordinance to set the expectation for visitors. Our school is opening. We're very excited about that. But in order to keep our kids safe at school, the community needs to be safe. I think somebody else just mentioned that when one person in our community gets sick, it increases the percent of our population affected dramatically compared to Campton or Thornton because we have so few residents. I would advise everybody to look at the Mask Up New Hampshire. It's a hashtag promoted through the New Hampshire Nurses Association. It's a great initiative, and I think that's we can sort of take our lead from there. But I think a mask ordinance is necessary. But if we don't have the capacity to enforce it, whether that's through a fine, or if the Department of Public Safety doesn't have the capacity to man stations in town square or elsewhere, then having a mask mandate is sort of a moot point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Anyone else? Oh, Tim Rose, Nina. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can get you unmuted, Nina. There you go, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I felt so safe when we were being confined. Our public officials made us so confident and everybody obeyed. And now that all the visitors come, people speed and they don't wear their masks. And I just wonder, do you have any knowledge of anyone coming through contact tracing? Does anybody who's cavorting around go home and get this sickness? Do you have any idea?
We don't have.
That's what I wonder when I see them.
Yeah, no, we don't have any of that type of information coming into the office.
Okay.
at this point.
Well, thank you. It's a big worry. You know, it's almost like winter time when the residents stay home and leave the valley to the visitors. I just go home.
Yep. Wendy Rathgeber, and then Frank.
Hi, yeah, just briefly, I wanted to speak up that I do absolutely support a mask ordinance. We just need that as a tool. It's really challenging. Even though all the businesses seem to have are on the same page, we still are kind of on our own in terms of enforcement. And I didn't really get into what I do so I can control people's behavior or try to tell them when they're doing something wrong. We just need that support, that extra tool. Sean, my 2 cents in. Thank you.
Okay. Frank Turner.
I want to recommend an implementation tool, a good sign, official sign created by the town that says, quote, "Do not enter this area without a mask." And then it says, "It is the law," and signed by the Board of Selectmen or enforcer, something that makes it a very official sign. You can even have them in different sizes for different areas. And then your requirement on the implementation is a lot easier, and it lets people know. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with comment? Linda Coleman.
Hi, I just wanted to say I am in favor of a mask ordinance. I think a town-wide one would be great. It would help us in Winter Hill. We have lots of guests Airbnb-ing every 2 or 3 days. They're turning over, and it would just be another, as Wendy said, tool that we could use to help us keep the community safe. Thank you.
Okay. Marilyn? Go
Yes.
ahead.
One more comment. A lot of people that I've discussed this with raised the question of enforcement, and I agree. I think it's like a lot of laws that we have, or ordinances, or mandates, whatever you want to call this enactment. I don't think it's completely realistic for our public safety department to enforce that. I don't think that that should be a presumptive part of writing the ordinance. I just think it's enough to have it in place so that townspeople and shopkeepers and moderators don't get stuck in a position of saying, I need you to wear a mask in my establishment. They can simply smile and say, it is our town ordinance. It is our town-wide ordinance, sir or madam. And they don't, that way it doesn't become a personal problem between you and the person that doesn't want to wear the mask. But I think I would suggest to the 3 selectmen when they sit down and talk about this, that the idea of enforcement could be unrealistic, and we accept that. It's not going to be 100%. And we wouldn't want them to be spending an inordinate amount of their time trying to do it. But if something on a rare occasion does raise to a high level of belligerence, then you could say, well, madam, I think I'm going to call public safety, and then they could come in and talk to them. And usually they're just trying to defuse. So it's better to leave it in their hands than for me as a moderator or Barbara as a shopkeeper to have to do it. Thanks.
Okay. Very good. Any other? Oh, Tim Rose, I'm unmuting you now. Try that, Tim. Go ahead.
I think that's right. I just have a technical question. When we're talking about masks, does that mean face coverings in general? I mean, people sometimes go by you and they pull their shirt up. Does that qualify as a face covering? But presumably, when you say masks, it will in some ways be defined as face covering.
That would be part of the definition, part of the process of the ordinance, Tim. We'd have to define what exactly we meant, but I think what everybody's talking about here is face coverings.
Thank you.
Which doesn't mean mask.
It can be called I think in the state of New Hampshire and some, like the order number 52 calls it a cloth face covering. So it could be a gaiter, it could be a mask, but it can't be a shirt and it can't be an arm.
She knows.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Barbara. Any other comments?
Not to put him on the spot, but I noticed that Tim is one of the participants, and I wonder if he had any insight as to their thinking relative to the mask management issue goes, not only in the short run here in the square, but at the mountain later on when it becomes an even bigger issue.
Okay, Tim, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. First of all, the mask issues at the mountain, I don't think will be as big of an issue considering we mostly wear goggles, masks, and gloves when we speak anyhow. And of course, inside facilities, we will be operating the same as we have been with mask mandates and social distancing with plexiglass and whatnot to protect not only the visitor and guest, but also the staff member. So that's kind of the statements there. The stance on masks around town, I think the ordinance is, the selectmen's decision. I don't think it's an easy ordinance to enforce. Reading through more and more of the communities and watching all the resort communities that are going through the same situation, having these same discussions, it's very, very deep and complex. I encourage everyone to do their research and continue to look at the mask ordinances and contact other resorts to find out what they're doing. What we're doing with our signage and our messaging from a resort standpoint has been effective in getting the word out about inside spaces. It's the outdoor spaces I truly think that Waterville provides that gives a false sense of security to the guest that may be coming from an area of really dense population. 6 feet is relatively close to each other, and there aren't many places in the valley where you feel like you're closer than 6 feet. Now, mind you, Town Square, we do have closer and tighter confines of the square. However, we have quite a few entrance and exits throughout Town Square. And it proves to be a challenge to encourage them when they're coming from the great wide open of the White Mountain National Forest into Town Square to install that mask. And, there are some people out there that aren't exactly the nicest people in the world, as Barbara alluded to. Those people are going to exist in every aspect of life, and it is a challenge to deal with them. I don't know what's best. I'm listening in to hear all of your comments, questions, and concerns, and judging from that, where my head lies as a personal aspect.
Okay. Margaret, do you want to wrap things up? It looks like we've covered everybody's comments. There you go.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for participating today. And I think you've given us a lot to think about, and we are in the process of thinking about this. I think we'll be discussing this again at our next official selectmen's meeting as to what direction we want to go in. But you've given us a lot to think about, and that was what today was about, and I very much appreciate your participation.
Okay, very good. So thank you everyone for attending. If the selectmen could please just stay on the line for 1 minute. We do have a non-public issue, but thank you folks for being here.